Hey guys, enjoy these new 20 stories. We hope you enjoy them. Let us know your thoughts. And as always, most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please smash that subscribe button and hit that like button too. It's free and does so much for us. We're forever grateful. Now to the stories.
You ever think you really know someone, only to find out you never did? That's exactly what happened with Jacob. We had been together for a while, at least that's what I thought. But after the breakup, things didn't just fall apart quietly. They blew up in ways I never imagined. The moment it all hit me hard was when I realized my car was gone. Not just missing or borrowed without telling me, straight up stolen. And the person who took it, Jacob. It's crazy how a car can be so much more than just a way to get around. To me, it symbolized freedom. It was my independence, something I worked hard for, saved for months to buy, and one of the few things I truly cared about. So when it disappeared, it wasn't just about losing a vehicle. It felt like someone ripped away a part of my life. At first, I told myself maybe I just forgot where I parked, or maybe the city had touted it. I checked everywhere, every parking lot, every side street I could think of, called towing companies, even the police. But nothing. That sinking feeling started settling in, like this heavy weight that just wouldn't lift. Then the calls started. People I didn't even know texting me pictures of my car. But it wasn't just sitting anywhere safe. No, it was speeding down busy streets, weaving through traffic dangerously. And the driver, without a doubt Jacob, it was like he was flaunting it. Using my car as a way to say, without words, I still control this part of your life. And he did it without ever directly confronting me. No texts, no threats, just silent, spiteful action. The whole thing was twisted in the worst way. Jacob wasn't just taking my car. He was taking my sense of safety. It shattered the idea that when something ends, it stays ended. The boundaries between us vanished overnight. I started replaying moments I'd ignored. How he kept showing up at my place uninvited after the breakup. How he never returned the spare key after I asked for it multiple times. I thought he was just careless, or maybe holding on emotionally. But no, it was something darker, a way to keep tabs, to stay in control. The theft wasn't just about the car, it was a power move. Jacob wanted to remind me he still had control, even though our relationship was over. Every time I saw those pictures of my car being driven recklessly, I felt like he was daring me, pushing me to react, to chase him down, to lose my cool. But I couldn't. I was stuck, helpless, just watching the chaos unfold from the sidelines. It wasn't only the physical loss that hit me. It was a mental toll. The image of Jacob behind the wheel, smirking, enjoying the mess he was causing. And me. I was powerless. Friends and family urged me to call the police to do something. But when I did, the response was frustratingly cold. The police told me it was more of a civil issue since the keys had been left with him. They said there was little they could do because technically he had some claim to the car. That feeling of helplessness crushed me more than the theft itself. Days turned into weeks, and my car never came back. It became clear how dangerous it was to trust someone so deeply, to think they wouldn't cross lines like this. Every time I passed the spot where I used to park it, it felt like a punch to the gut. The memories attached to that car suddenly felt like they belonged to someone else's life. Jacob twisted the whole thing to his advantage, too. Friends who heard about the car started treating me like I was the problem, asking if I was okay in a way that felt more like doubt than concern. Meanwhile, he ignored my messages, acted like none of it mattered, like he was above it all, enjoying the control he had over me. I tried to move on. Eventually, I found a new car, but it was never the same. The freedom I once felt behind the wheel was tainted by the memory of what happened. That car wasn't just metal and wheels anymore. It became a symbol of betrayal, control, and how someone you once trusted can take everything from you in the most personal way. It's wild how something as simple as a car can turn into the centerpiece of a nightmare. Jacob didn't just take my ride. He stole a piece of my peace of mind. And honestly, I'm still figuring out how to get it back. How to rebuild trust in myself, in others, and in the things that used to feel like mine. Every time I hear an engine roar or see a car speeding recklessly down the street, I get this flash of anger mixed with sadness. It's a reminder that sometimes the people you care about don't just walk away. They try to drive your life off course, one reckless turn at a time. And you're left picking up the pieces, hoping you can steer yourself back to safety. So yeah, that's what happened with Jacob. The guy I thought I knew, the one I trusted, who used something as simple as my car to remind me just how much power he still had. And even though it's over, I'm still dealing with the wreckage. After Yasmin and I broke up, I thought the worst was behind me. Breakups are messy, sure. There are the awkward silences, the lingering texts that say too much or not enough, and the inevitable phase where you replay every conversation, wondering what you could have done differently. I expected that pain. I even braced for the silence that comes afterward. The clean cut, the final busting, the distance. What I didn't expect was something darker, something persistent, something that didn't feel like heartbreak. It felt like a haunting. It started with my car. The first time, it was just a faint scratch on the passenger side door. I shrugged it off. Maybe someone parked too close. Maybe a careless kid with a bike. Nothing worth thinking too hard about. But then it happened again, a shallow dent near the wheel well. Then another scratch, this one longer, rougher, dragging across the rear like a signature. Each time I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the parking lot was just bad. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe I just wanted it to mean something when it didn't. But the pattern was impossible to ignore. Every mark showed up after something happened, after a text turned sour, after a phone call ended with raised voices or silence. It wasn't just random bad luck. It was a message, a quiet reminder that someone wasn't done with me, that someone still wanted to be felt even if they were no longer heard. At first, I resisted the idea. I didn't want to believe Yasmin could do something like that. She was angry, sure. She had reason to be. But this felt calculated. The damage wasn't chaotic. It was surgical. Subtle enough to make me second-guess myself, but clear enough to be unmistakable once I started looking. My car used to be my safe place. It wasn't just a vehicle. It was my escape pod after long days, the cocoon where I could sit in silence and breathe. Music sounded better there. Thoughts were clearer. It was the one place I could be alone without feeling lonely. So when the damage started to add up, it didn't just hurt financially. It felt like a violation. Like someone was trying to claw their way into the one space I had left untouched. I became obsessive. After every drive, I'd circle the car like a sentry, scanning the paint for imperfections. I started parking in different spots. I added better lights, even installed motion sensors. But no matter what I did, the damage kept appearing. Quietly, persistently, like clockwork. The worst part was how it wore me down. The constant dread. The gnawing feeling that I was always being watched. I couldn't prove anything, not at first. I didn't want to believe it was her, but deep down I knew. Who else would time their actions so precisely? Who else knew me that well? One night, after a particularly bad fight over the phone, I found a fresh dent on the hood. Not a big one, barely visible in daylight, but it was there, centered and unmistakable. That was the night I finally checked the security footage. The quality wasn't great, grainy, jumpy, but it told me everything I needed to know. There she was, Yasmin, moving around my car like a ghost. Not rushed, not panicked, just deliberate, focused. She crouched near the driver's side door, then slowly stood, tracing her handle on the frame like she was remembering something. She didn't even glance at the camera. She knew where it was, or she didn't care. That moment shifted everything. The uncertainty was gone, and in its place came a cold, creeping fear. It wasn't just anger anymore. It wasn't even about me. It was about control. Power. She wanted to remind me that even without her name in my contacts, even with the distance, she could still reach me. Still make me flinch. I started living differently after that. I became jumpy, paranoid. I took alternate routes home, avoided familiar spots. I even considered selling the car, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. That car wasn't just mine. It had been with me through everything. Selling it felt like surrender, like giving her the win. But keeping it meant carrying the scars. Every mark told a story. Not just about what she did, but what I allowed to keep happening. I filed a report, told friends, but without clear evidence, nothing stuck. And Yasmin, she stayed just far enough away to keep her hands clean. People told me to move on, let it go, get over it. But moving on isn't the switch you flip. It's a crawl through broken glass, and every cut reminds you of where you've been. The car became more than transportation. It was a battlefield. A record of psychological warfare. And every time I saw a new mark, I didn't just see her rage. I saw her presence. The haunting wasn't loud. It didn't scream or knock at my door. It scratched, quietly, patiently, like a whisper in the night, just enough to unsettle but never enough to confirm. I still drive the car. I still check it every day, and the scratches are still there. Some have faded. Others remain stubbornly clear. I don't try to cover them up anymore. They're part of the story now, a reminder. Yasmin didn't just break up with me, she broke into my peace. She left fingerprints on my sanity, tiny fractures in my reality. And while she may be gone, the echo of her stays. Not in text or calls, but in silence, in scratches, in shadows caught on grainy footage. Some ghosts don't slam doors or drag chains. Some ghosts don't disappear when you want them to. Some ghosts leave marks. Some breakups leave you bruised and angry, but others leave you feeling confused, lost, and broken in ways you never expected. My breakup with Zach was the kind of nightmare that drags on far beyond the day it happens. At first, I thought we'd just gone our separate ways, and that would be it. But what followed was a twisted, relentless experience that completely shook me to my core. It all started with one of the most bizarre things I've ever heard in my life. Zach told me he was pregnant. I know how ridiculous that sounds, and honestly, if someone else told me that story, I'd probably laugh or think they were making it up. But I was living it, and Zach was dead serious. In the beginning, I thought it might be some kind of joke or maybe a weird cry for attention. But Zach wasn't joking. Not even once. He claimed he was feeling all the classic pregnancy symptoms. Nausea that hit him suddenly, overwhelming fatigue that left him drained, and mood swings that made him break down at the smallest things. It was so detailed and consistent that I started to think maybe he was experiencing some kind of delusion or mental health crisis. It felt like stepping into a reality that was unrevealing before me, and I didn't know how to respond. Instead of the breakup bringing peace, it became the starting point of a nightmare that took months to unfold. Zach quickly turned the pregnancy story into a weapon, using it to manipulate me in ways I never thought possible. He said that the baby depended on me, that I was the only person who could truly support him through this difficult time. When I asked for proof like medical records or even just a simple doctor's appointment confirmation, he either dodged my questions or lashed out, accusing me of being cold and uncaring. I found myself stuck in this exhausting limbo, caught between wanting to be compassionate and fearing I was being drawn into a twisted game. I didn't want to be cruel or dismissive, but the doubt kept eating at me, and the emotional strain was unbearable. The story Zach spun was intricate, filled with enough detail to make it almost believable. He told me about various appointments he supposedly had with doctors and specialists, about ultrasounds and test results, but none of it ever lined up when I tried to confirm it. I even reached out discreetly to mutual friends, hoping someone had seen him at a clinic or hospital, but no one had. Then there were the social media posts. He started posting blurry ultrasound images that looked suspiciously like stock photos downloaded from the internet. Pictures of baby clothes and nursery items would pop up, but they felt staged and hollow. It was like watching a performance with Zach blurring the lines between truth and fiction just enough to keep me hooked. The more I questioned him, the more tightly he wrapped his grip around me. Zach used this fabricated pregnancy as a leash, pulling me back into his orbit every time I tried to escape. He expertly twisted my feelings of responsibility and care into a cage that I couldn't break free from. I felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells, terrified that if I pushed too hard or showed skepticism, I'd become the villain, the person who didn't care about Zach or the baby. The pressure was suffocating, and it was impossible to tell where compassion ended and manipulation began. The timeline Zach created was never stable. Some days, the due date was months away, a distant future event we needed to prepare for. Other days, it was suddenly just weeks, and the urgency ramped up like a ticking clock. Sometimes the pregnancy tests were positive, but when I asked to see them, he claimed the doctor was confused or that more tests were needed to be sure. He would vanish for days at a time, and each time he returned, the story had shifted, the details rewritten. It was like being trapped in a movie where the script kept changing, and I had no choice but to keep watching, powerless to stop the performance. Then came the emotional blackmail, the real trap. Zach would send messages about how scared and alone he was, how much he needed me to be there for him. Every text, every call felt like a carefully placed snare, pulling me back into his world. The pregnancy wasn't just a lie. It was a weapon, wielded with precision to keep me tethered and unable to break free. It wasn't about love or closure anymore. It was about control. The whole thing twisted my sense of reality and left me doubting everything I thought I knew about us. As the months dragged on, I began to lose my sense of what was real and what wasn't. I questioned my own judgment constantly. Was I missing something? Was I the problem for doubting him? But then the truth finally cracked through the fog. A close friend, someone I trusted deeply, told me Zach had never once been to a doctor. Even worse, they said Zach was boasting about how he had managed to fool me for so long. That realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I had been caught in a web of lies and manipulation for months, trying to support something that didn't exist. It was the cruelest kind of abuse, psychological and emotional, but no less real or damaging. Zach took something sacred and serious and turned it into a weapon to tear me down. The pain wasn't just from being lied to. It was from how deeply it shattered my trust and my sense of self. The lie reached inside me and twisted parts of my heart I didn't know could break. Eventually, I cut him out of my life, but the damage lingered long after the final message was sent. I second-guessed myself constantly, wondering if there had been some shred of truth buried beneath the lies. But there wasn't. It was a cruel fabrication designed to trap and control. The process of healing meant rebuilding trust in myself, in my instincts, and in reality. It was a long, painful road back from the edge of that madness. What Zach did taught me a harsh lesson. Sometimes, the scariest monsters aren't strangers lurking in the dark or people you barely know. They're the ones you once loved, who used your empathy and care against you. His fabricated pregnancy was a cage of guilt, confusion, and fear, and breaking free from it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But I did it, and while the scars remain, they remind me how important it is to protect myself and never lose sight of what's real. The moment everything started to unravel wasn't marked by any grand event. It was subtle at first, little shifts in how people looked at me, a coldness creeping into familiar places, the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. At work, where I spent most of my time building something I was proud of, the atmosphere changed without warning. It was as if someone had flipped a switch overnight, and suddenly, I was the outsider, the one nobody trusted anymore. That someone was Miriam, my ex, and she wasn't just bitter, she was on a mission to destroy me. Miriam and I didn't part ways quietly. Our breakup was messy, filled with hurt and anger, but I never imagined she'd go this far. At first, I thought maybe she was just venting, trying to get over it the way some people do. But then the whispers began, quiet conversations that stopped when I walked by, eyes that darted away and messages that didn't make sense. I shrugged it off at first, telling myself it was just in my head. But it wasn't. Something was wrong, and was about to find out just how wrong. It started with a few strange emails, my boss forwarding me messages with worried notes, coworkers giving me uneasy looks. Then came the phone calls from HR, vague questions that felt like they were fishing for a confession I didn't have. That's when I learned the truth. Miriam had been making calls, spreading stories about me behind my back. Not just rumors, but damaging lies designed to ruin me professionally and personally. What shocked me most was how calculated it all was. Miriam wasn't just venting, she had a plan. She knew exactly who to call, what to say, and how to make sure the story stuck. She painted me as unprofessional, unreliable, and even dangerous. I heard later she left voicemails for my boss, claiming I was deliberately showing up late, stealing office supplies, and being disrespectful to clients. None of it was true, but by the time I heard these things, the damage was already done. The moment everything felt real was during a meeting when my manager abruptly cut me off and asked to talk after. My heart dropped. That's when I was told about the calls and lies Miriam had spread. The worst part was how no one wanted to confront her directly. Doubt lingered like a fog, poisoning the workplace. Even if they weren't sure if the stories were true, this suspicion alone was enough to turn everyone against me. Work became a cold, hostile place overnight. People who once joked and collaborated with me suddenly ignored me. Projects I was meant to lead were reassigned without explanation. It felt like I was slipping away from everything I'd worked so hard for, powerless to stop it. I tried to explain, to plead my case, but once a rumor spreads, it's like a stain you can't wash out. No matter how hard I try, I was marked. I kept wondering why Miriam would do this. Sure, we had problems, but I never thought she'd attack me through my job. It felt like she'd studied my weaknesses, choosing my career as the battleground because she knew it mattered to me most. She even twisted details from our private life, spinning stories to make me look like a terrible person in front of my coworkers. It was as if she wanted to burn down the parts of my life I cared about, one lie at a time. Every day was like walking on thin ice. I was anxious about answering the phone, opening emails, even just turning up to work. I feared each new message would be another accusation or another whisper to add to the pile. Nights were the hardest. Sleep became elusive as my mind raced with worst-case scenarios. What if I lost my job? How would I pay rent? How would I explain to my family what had happened? I felt trapped in a nightmare that wouldn't end. One night, scrolling through social media to distract myself, I discovered something worse. Miriam had created fake profiles pretending to be someone else. She was sending messages to my coworkers, spreading lies from accounts no one could trace back to her. The deception was elaborate and relentless. I couldn't keep up. The lies kept multiplying, and the circle around me slowly started to believe them. It became clear. This was no ordinary breakup gone bad. This was harassment, and it was terrifyingly well planned. Miriam wasn't just lashing out, she was strategically dismantling my life. I started documenting everything: screenshots, call logs, emails. I knew that if I wanted to protect myself or even take action, I'd need proof. Without it, no one would believe me. My life outside of work suffered too. Friends began to pull away, unsure what to believe. The guy who once had a solid group of people around him suddenly found himself alone in a crowded room. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like I was bleeding out in front of everyone, and no one wanted to help stop the damage. Eventually, I confronted Miriam. I didn't expect an apology or to fix anything. I needed to hear from her why. Her answer was chilling in its coldness. She didn't seem to care about what she'd done. It was like she enjoyed watching me fall apart from the sidelines. The cruelty was calculated, deliberate, and haunting. In the end, I lost the job. It wasn't just about the money. It was the loss of a place that had been a big part of who I was. All because one person decided to turn our world upside down. Looking back, it's clear how toxic the whole situation was, not just because of Miriam, but because of how easily one person can manipulate everything around them. How trust can shatter without you even realizing it's happening. Now I'm rebuilding. A new job, a new city, new boundaries. I'm more guarded, more cautious about who I let in. But sometimes, late at night, I still replay those dark days when everything slipped away. It wasn't just a breakup. It was an attack, a strategic, calculated destruction of the person I was. And honestly, I'm not sure if I'll ever fully recover from it. Toxic exes don't just walk away. They drag you through hell first, and the scars they leave don't fade easily. You ever feel like someone's watching you in your own apartment, even when everything looks perfectly normal? That kind of low-grade paranoia where you start double-checking your locks twice without even realizing it. That was my life for a solid 2 months. And it all started with messages. Angry, out of nowhere, completely wild messages from people I didn't know. Some were strangers, others were mutuals I hadn't spoken to in years. They were accusing me of sending them explicit videos and screenshots, stuff I knew didn't exist. At first, I thought my account had been hacked, or maybe someone was impersonating me. That's not unheard of online. I tried not to spiral. But the messages got more specific. People saying they had proof. A few even sent me screenshots. And that's when I realized they weren't spam. They were deep fakes. Disturbingly realistic ones. And in those fakes, it was my face, my voice, except it wasn't. I don't even want to describe some of the stuff those fake videos showed me doing. I knew I hadn't done it, but it looked real. And the worst part, the files were being sent from accounts that I once shared passwords to. Old cloud drives. Backup folders I forgot even existed. My stomach dropped when it hit me. Gina. She was my ex. We dated for almost a year. She was quiet, sharp, a little obsessive. Always coding, always working on something behind her screen. She had a way of making people think she was harmless, but I had seen the other side of her. Possessive and controlling, disguised as concern. She'd monitor who I followed, mirror my screen on her laptop without asking, and she always had a reason for it. I was too trusting. I ignored the red flags. When we broke up, I thought it was clean. I kept the apartment, changed my passwords, at least the ones I remembered. I didn't think she'd want anything else from me. We'd barely spoken in weeks. I assumed it was over. But it wasn't, not even close. After the deepfake started going around, I tried to confront her. She ghosted me, deleted her socials, blocked me. But by then the damage was spreading. Some people believed the videos. Some didn't, but the stain of it was enough to mess with everything. I lost a job offer because of one anonymous tip. One of my close friends started distancing herself without even telling me why. But that wasn't the worst part. Around that time, I noticed something off in my apartment. The kitchen lights would be on when I came home, even though I always turned them off. One time I found my closet slightly open, even though I'd shut it that morning. My toothbrush was wet one evening, and I hadn't used it since that morning. These were little things, but they started stacking up. I started thinking I was just stressed, paranoid. Maybe I was moving stuff and forgetting. Until one day I found my backup hard drive on my desk. I hadn't touched it in months. It was usually buried at the back of my closet. And now it was plugged into my laptop, like someone had been using it. That's when I clicked. Gina had a spare key. I had given it to her when we were dating. I'd forgotten to get it back. I tore through my apartment looking for any other sign. And I found it. A tiny Wi-Fi camera tucked into one of the fake books on my shelf. I froze. My skin went cold. I realized she hadn't just been messing with me online. She'd been in my apartment multiple times. She'd been watching me silently, invisibly. That was a presence I kept feeling, that subtle sense of being observed. She knew when I left, when I'd be gone for long stretches. She had everything she needed to keep accessing my life like it was a shared document. I changed the locks that night. New bolts, new door handle, everything. I threw out the book she'd hidden the camera in and tore apart the rest of the place looking for more. Found a second one, this time hidden behind the vent in the bathroom. I couldn't breathe for a minute. My legs gave out, and I sat there on the floor, staring at the tiny blinking light like it was something radioactive. I went offline completely after that. Deleted every social app, scrubbed my phone, bought a new laptop. I didn't post anything for weeks. I started keeping the curtains shut all the time, even during the day. I left my phone at home when I went out. I was scared of giving her anything else she could use. I kept waiting for her to reach out, to explain, to apologize, to say it was all a joke gone too far. But she didn't. She disappeared. The videos eventually stopped circulating, or at least people stopped messaging me about them. But that silence was somehow worse. I never found out what she really wanted. Maybe revenge. Maybe control. Maybe she just liked knowing she could ruin me without touching me, without ever saying a word. All I know is she didn't have to break anything to break in my life. She didn't have to screen or stalk me in the traditional sense. She just had to sit behind her screen, let the tech do the work, and walk right back into my home like she still belonged there. I live somewhere else now. New apartment, new job, new locks. I double-check them every night. Sometimes I wonder if she's still watching. If there's another camera I didn't find, is she just waiting for me to let my guard down? And honestly, I don't know if I'll ever feel completely alone again. You ever get that weird sense that you're not really alone, even when you are? Like the air just feels heavier for no reason, and suddenly every creak in the floor makes you pause. That was my life for weeks after Chad and I broke up. And at first, I thought I was just being dramatic. That meeting out wasn't over him yet, and my mind was messing with me. But it wasn't in my head. I met Chad when I was finishing my last year at university. He was charming, super calm, never raised his voice, always seemed like he had everything together. We dated for about a year, moved in together for a few months, but it didn't last. Things turned cold fast. He had this way of staring at you like he was listening but wasn't really hearing a thing. You'd talk, and his eyes would just pass through you. Anyway, when we broke up, I kept the apartment. It was a small studio in a quiet building, not the nicest place in the world, but it was mine. He left without a fight, packed up his stuff, and was gone in a day. I didn't even think about the spare key. I forgot and I gave it to him when he first moved in, back when we thought we'd be together forever, or whatever. Stupid, I know. The weird stuff didn't start right away. It crept in slowly. One day I came home and noticed a drawer in the kitchen was half open. I always close it, always. I'm one of those people who likes everything neat. I figured maybe I just left it open that morning and didn't remember. Brushed it off. Then it happened again the next day. Same drawer, slightly open. Then a cabinet door. Then the closet. Nothing big, just barely ajar, like someone opened it. then slowly push it almost shut. Again, I try to reason with myself. Maybe I was rushing in the mornings. Maybe I'd forgotten. Maybe I was losing my mind a little. Then one night I came home and the rug in my living room was missing. Straight up gone. That's when I stopped making excuses. I tore through the apartment, checked every corner, every closet. The rug wasn't anywhere. I even went down to the laundry room in the basement. Nothing. The next morning it was back, folded neatly under the coffee table like it had never left. My stomach dropped. That's not something that just happens. I live alone. No one else has a key. That's when I remembered. Chad still had the spare. It was like something snapped inside me. Suddenly, everything made sense, and none of it felt okay. I texted him, but he didn't answer. I called straight to voicemail. I went to his Instagram. Deleted, like he vanished, which was insane because just 2 weeks earlier, he liked a story I posted of my dinner. I changed the locks that same day, but the weirdness didn't stop. I'd come home and the bathroom mirror would have a smudge in the corner that wasn't there before. My shampoo bottles would be rearranged. A fork would be sitting out on the counter when I hadn't eaten anything that needed one. I'd find a window unlocked. My alarm clock would be reset. Just little things, but enough to make you feel insane. I started leaving things in specific ways to test it. I'd balance a coin on the edge of the dresser. Place a mug upside down on the floor by the bed. Every time I came back from work, something would be slightly off. The coin would be face up instead of on its edge. The mug would be in the sink. He wasn't stealing anything. He wasn't trashing the place. It was almost worse than that. He was just there, watching me live. Moving things just enough to remind me that he still had access. That wasn't safe. Not really. Not in my own home. I started having trouble sleeping. I'd lie awake, listening for the sound of the lock turning or for footsteps I couldn't prove were real. I bought a camera. One of those little hidden ones you can tuck on a shelf. But when I checked the footage, it was blank. Like someone had known it was there and turned it off. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have proof he was coming in. There was no sign of forced entry, nothing stolen. I couldn't go to the police and say, "Hey, I think my ex is breaking into my apartment to mildly rearrange my stuff." They'd think I was being dramatic or trying to stir up drama over a breakup. One night, I left a note on the kitchen counter. Just said, "I know you've been here." It was gone next day. That was the last straw. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up with a baseball bat in my lap, lights on, heart racing at every low creak. But he didn't come back, or if he did, he didn't touch anything. I moved out a week later. Didn't tell anyone where I was going, didn't forward my mail. I broke my lease and left half my furniture behind. I didn't care. I just wanted to feel safe again. I don't know what his endgame was. I don't think he wanted to hurt me. I think he just wanted control. He wanted me to know he could get to me whenever he wanted, even after it was over. That he was still in my life, even if I didn't want him there. Sometimes I still wonder if he found my new place. If he followed me from work one day and made a copy of the key when I wasn't looking. Every now and then I'll wake up and check the kitchen drawers, just in case. I met Priya in the most regular way possible. We were both working at a small cafe downtown. Nothing special, just a place that sold overpriced lads, played lo-fi playlists, and smelled constantly of burnt espresso beans. She was new when she started, quiet but not shy. She wasn't the kind of person who avoided conversation, just the kind who made you feel like she already knew what you were going to say. There was something in her eyes, curiosity mixed with calculation, that made people either lean in or back away. I leaned in. We started talking during our shifts, usually in those slow, dragging hours between the morning rush and the lunch crowd. She asked odd questions, ones that felt more like riddles than small talk. Things like, do you think people are just chemicals and memories? Or would you rather lose your name or your face? At first, I thought she was being ironic, trying to be deep in that way people sometimes do when they want to seem mysterious. But the thing is, she wasn't joking. She never was. Despite all that, we got close. Fast. Too fast, honestly. One week we were casual coworkers. The next we were inseparable. She started coming over to my place more often. Then she started staying the night. Then she just stopped leaving. At first, it was flattering. There's something addictive about someone wanting to be near you all the time. It felt like connection. intensity, passion. It took me too long to recognize it for what it really was, obsession disguised as closeness. The first time things got strange, like genuinely strange, I walked into the bathroom and found her standing by the sink, holding one of those tiny glass vials you see in apothecary shops. She didn't look guilty or surprised. She just looked calm. When I asked what she was doing, she said she was collecting a trace of me, that it helped her feel grounded. She said it like she was describing something completely ordinary, like brushing teeth or tying shoes. I laughed. It felt like the kind of thing you're supposed to laugh at. But she didn't laugh with me. She just capped the vial, slipped it into her pocket, and walked out of the room. I told myself it was just a quirk, a one-time thing. It wasn't. It turned into a routine. Every time I brushed my teeth or rinsed out a glass, she'd be right behind me, quiet, watching, waiting. I started noticing more vials, in her purse, in her backpack, tucked into coat pockets. She labeled them with dates, sometimes with little symbols I didn't recognize. When I asked her why, she said she liked tracking my presence, that it helped her understand how people changed over time. She never asked for permission, but she never forced anything either. It was this strange middle space, like I was being tested, like she was waiting to see how much I'd tolerate before I pushed back, and every time I didn't say no, it felt like I was silently agreeing. So I didn't say no, even when I wanted to, even when I started feeling like I was being studied instead of loved. She once told me that she believed people were more than just who they were in a moment, that we left echoes of ourselves behind, in cups, in clothes, in places we sat too long. I told her it sounded poetic. She said it wasn't poetry, it was science. I caught her once with one of the vials pressed to her lips, just holding it there like she was drawing something from it. I asked her what she was doing, and she said it helped her feel closer to me. I didn't know how to respond. It made me uncomfortable, but she said it with such stillness, such certainty, that I second-guessed my reaction. She always had a way of making her reality feel like the correct one. Then one night, while we were lying on the couch, she asked me something that stopped me cold. She turned to me and said, "Would you ever let me keep something deeper?" I asked what she meant. She said, "Something that proves we're completely connected, something no one else has." I didn't answer. I didn't want to know what she meant. I just shook my head and turned back to the screen. She didn't push, but the silence between us stretched into something brittle. And after that night, something in her changed. She stopped saying over, but she'd show up randomly. Just pop in, ask for something strange, like the water I hadn't finished or the spoon I just used. When I started saying no, she looked heartbroken. Not angry, just deeply hurt, like I'd betrayed some unspoken bond. Then the messages started. At first, they were just sad. "I miss you. I still feel you," but they quickly became stranger. "You're fading. I need a stronger memory." I stopped replying. Then I blocked her. A week later, I came home and found a small wooden box outside my apartment door. Inside were 5 vials, each labeled with different dates. I didn't open them. I didn't want to know what was inside. There was a note tucked beneath them, written in neat cursive. It said, "You can't erase a connection this deep." That was when I moved. I quit my job, deleted my social media, changed my number. I tried to erase myself. Digitally, physically, emotionally. Not because I was afraid she'd hurt me exactly, but because I was afraid she still believed we belonged to each other. And I didn't know what someone like that might do with a belief like that. I haven't seen her since. Sometimes I think about her when I check the mailbox, or when a stranger lingers too long in a crowd. I wonder if she's still watching, still collecting, still believing in a connection that was never mutual. But what really stays with me isn't what she did. It's how calm she was doing it. How convinced she was that this was love. That keeping parts of someone was normal as long as you called it affection. That was Priya. Some people keep letters. Others hold on to shirts or playlists or perfume bottles. She kept traces. Some stories don't start with fireworks or drama. They just creep in, slow and quiet, until one day you wake up and realize everything you thought was solid has turned to ash. That's what happened with Oliver. I didn't see the mess coming because it wasn't loud or obvious at first. It was subtle, like a shadow stretching across the floor, unnoticed until it swallowed the whole room. I'd met him in the most boring, normal way possible. through mutuals at a get-together that was too loud, smelled like cheap vodka, and had way too many people packed into a small living room. He stood out because he wasn't trying to. He wasn't loud, wasn't desperate for attention. Just sat there, hoodie up, nursing a drink like he'd rather be anywhere else. We clicked fast, like too fast in hindsight. He was good at asking questions, the kind that made you think he actually cared about the answers. He remembered little details and brought them up days later like it was nothing. That made him feel different from everyone else I dealt with. When I talked, he actually looked at me. You'd be surprised how rare that is. Or maybe you wouldn't. We started seeing each other, and for the first few months, things were pretty great. Nothing dramatic, just movie nights, walks around the lake, talking till 2 in the morning about stuff that didn't even matter. He was weirdly mature in some ways. Polite around my family, respectful, always helped with the dishes without being asked. My mom liked him. A lot. I didn't think anything of it at first. I mean, parents liking your partner is supposed to be a good thing, right? She always got a little extra smiley when he was around. Said things like, he's got that old soul vibe, you know, or he's got presence. My dad was out of the picture and had been since I was 11, so maybe she was just glad I found someone stable. That's what I told myself. She was lonely, but not like that. Or so I thought. Things started slipping around the 6-month mark. Oliver started acting twitchy, like he'd check his phone a little too often, and then lock it like he was guarding state secrets. He'd show up late to plans with some vague excuse about helping someone move or going on a late-night walk to clear his head. Sometimes he'd flinch if I touched him out of nowhere, which was new. I figured maybe he was just stressed or going through something personal. He'd always been kind of private. Then one night, I borrowed his laptop to look up a recipe. He was in the shower. I wasn't snooping, not at first, but a message popped up on his email. It was a thread, an ongoing one. At first, I thought it was some weird spam until I saw my mom's name in the contact, just her first name, like they were familiar. I clicked it. I shouldn't have, but I did. The messages weren't flirty, not exactly. They were worse. They were intimate. Long, emotional paragraphs. Stuff about how they understood each other in a way no one else did. About how they needed to keep this between them for now. One of them ended with, I still remember that night in the kitchen. I haven't stopped thinking about it. I felt like my ribs cracked inward. My throat dried up. I scrolled and scrolled, eyes burning, not even reading it all, just catching glimpses. It had been going on for weeks, maybe longer. My boyfriend, my mom. I shut the laptop and walked out. Didn't even wait for him to get out of the shower. Just left. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I avoided both of them. I locked myself in my room and let my phone die. I didn't want apologies. I didn't want explanations. I wanted the entire memory of them erased, like someone hit reset on my brain. But of course, it didn't end there. He texted, called, said he missed me, said he didn't know what I was talking about. Denied it all, even when I told him I saw the emails. Said they were taken out of context. Like somehow there's a context where your boyfriend and your mom swapping secret emotional confessions is fine. And she tried. Knocked on my door like she hadn't ripped my entire world sideways. Tried to play it cool. Said he was confused. That he probably misread things. That maybe she had said something that came off the wrong way. I couldn't even look at her. The woman who raised me. Who told me to trust my instincts. Who comforted me through middle school heartbreak. Who used to call me her mini-me. She wasn't crying. She didn't even look ashamed. Just annoyed. Like I was being dramatic for reacting the way any human being would. It was almost worse than a full-blown screaming match. That cold, dismissive calm. After that, I moved in with a friend for a while. Couldn't stay in that house. Every time I walked past the kitchen, I wondered if that was where it happened. If she made him coffee while I was asleep upstairs. If he laughed at her jokes the same way he laughed at mine. If they whispered about me like I was some clueless background character in her messed up little story. I told a few close friends, but most didn't know what to say. One even asked if I was sure I wasn't overreacting because I hadn't caught them in the act. That word made me snap. Overreacting. As if betrayal only counts when it's physical. As if emotional cheating with my mom somehow isn't real. Oliver eventually stopped trying. Or maybe I blocked enough of his attempts that he gave up. I don't know. I don't care. He's gone now. Vanished back into whatever hole he crawled out of. And as for her, we barely speak. I moved out, stopped answering her calls. She still sends birthday texts like nothing happened. I delete them without reading. Sometimes I wonder if they're still in touch, if they ever met up again. Part of me hopes not, but a bigger part doesn't even want to know. I'd rather never get that answer. It's been months now. I'm better, I guess, or at least I pretend to be. But something in me cracked that week. Some part of me that used to believe in trust like it was this simple thing you could hand someone and expect them not to draw. That part's gone. Oliver didn't just cheat on me. He rewrote what love meant to me. With my own mom. Some people break up and disappear. Some cry for a week and move on. May was not one of those people. When I met her, she was a quiet one in the corner at a party no one really wanted to be at. She had this tired look, like she'd already seen through everyone in the room and didn't care to pretend otherwise. She said she liked horror movies and thunderstorms, and always carried a little sketchbook in her bag that she never let anyone touch. I thought that was cool. Mysterious. I thought a lot of dumb things back then. We didn't date for long. 4 months tops. But the thing about May was, she didn't do halfway. From day one, it was like I signed some unspoken contract. She wanted to know where I was, what I was thinking, who I talked to, why I said certain things the way I said them. She'd ask these weird, loaded questions out of nowhere, like, do you think you're a good person? Or, have you ever really loved someone, or do you just think you have? Like I was on trial and didn't know it. Still, I stayed. There was this strange magnetism to her. She always made me feel like I was the only person in the world that she opened up to, like I was special just for being let into her little bubble of moods and secrets. Looking back now, I wasn't special. I was just next. The breakup wasn't even dramatic. I just told her I didn't think it was working and that we were in different places. She stared at me, really stared, and then just nodded, said nothing. Walked out of my apartment. That silence was way worse than screaming. I thought that was it. I really did. I thought maybe she'd cry to her friends, maybe post a moody poem or something. Normal post-breakup stuff. Instead, she went nuclear. The first thing she did was call my mom. My actual mom. I don't even know how she got the number. Maybe through an old Facebook post or a contact on my phone when I wasn't looking. She told her I was manipulative, cold, and emotionally abusive. Said I had anger issues, said I gaslit her constantly, said I used her for emotional support, and then tossed her out like trash. I found out because my mom called me crying. Told me she never raised me to be that kind of man. I didn't even know what to say. Then came the texts from my cousins, people I barely saw. My aunt. One of my high school teachers. All confused. Some angry. One said she was disappointed in me. I hadn't even seen this woman in 5 years. May had gone a full campaign. Every friend I had got a message. Some long, dramatic paragraph about how I was a narcissist, how I mistreated her, how I had dark patterns of behavior that I'd hidden. She even DM'd the people I'd only met once at a birthday party. She didn't care how close they were to me. If they knew my name, they got the message. And that still wasn't the worst part. She made a blog, a whole blog. Not a throwaway tweet, not a one-time rant. A website, with a domain, with pictures, with stories. At first, I didn't know about it. A girl I had gone on one date with told me. Said she Googled my name out of curiosity, and the second result was a blog titled My Life with a Monster. I clicked it. I wish I hadn't. It wasn't just breakup drama. It was fiction dressed up like fact. She posted long entries that painted me as this twisted, manipulative sociopath. She said I screamed at her during car rides, that I threatened to harm myself to make her stay, that I isolated her from her family. She described my apartment in detail, my old dog's name. She posted a photo of a hoodie she said I gave her, captioned with something like the one thing he gave me before breaking me. She posted screenshots of our texts, edited so heavily I barely recognized them. She would cut out her own parts and stitch my words together to make it look like I was cruel, detached, cold. In one, it looked like I told her she was lucky I didn't leave sooner. I never said that. Not even close. And the comments, oh man, the comments. Strangers eating it up. People offering her support. Calling me a monster, a textbook narcissist, a dangerous man who should be reported. One person even said she should expose me to my jaw, which she did try, by the way. Emailed HR. They didn't take it seriously because there was no proof, but I still had to sit through a meeting where they asked if I had any ongoing interpersonal conflicts. I stopped going out. I stopped posting anything online. I deleted accounts, changed numbers. I even moved apartments. But she found ways to poke at me. She'd message people who followed me on my new private accounts. She'd make throwaway Instagram profiles just to lurk and leave creepy messages like, "I hope she knows who you really are." One time, she left a note taped to my building's mailbox. Just my name and the words, "You can't undo what you did." I didn't respond. Not once. I never messaged her, never confronted her. Everyone kept telling me to ignore it, that she'd get bored and move on. She didn't. It's been a year. The blog's still up. She posts less now, but sometimes she writes these weird, cryptic entries that clearly reference me without using my name. She'll say stuff like, "I still see his lies in my dreams," or "He's out there charming someone else while I dig myself out of the pit he left me in." It sounds poetic if you don't know she's talking about someone who just broke up with her gently and walked away. The worst part is, some people still believe her. I lost a few friends over it. They won't say it directly, but I can feel it when they talk to me now, like they're waiting for me to reveal the monster she described. Like maybe she was right. Anyway, that's May. Don't really know what else to say. She didn't just break up with me. She broke into my life and left the door open so everyone could walk through and throw stones. I don't miss her. I don't even hate her. I just want her to stop writing. I dated a guy once who made me feel like I was the third wheel in my own relationship. His name was Drew, and at first, it felt like he was the answer to all those messy, boring dudes I wasted time on in high school. He was clean, polite, funny without trying, and had this way of paying attention that made you feel like you mattered more than anything. But what I didn't realize at the time is that attention can be a kind of control if it's pointed in just the right way. He had this tight group of guy friends he grew up with. They were always around. I mean always. They came to our dates, showed up when we were hanging out in my room, called him in the middle of dinner, crashed on his couch constantly. I thought it was kind of cute at first, that whole brotherhood thing. I told myself it meant he was loyal, but I didn't know then what that loyalty actually looked like. Things got weird around month 3. There were little moments, like I'd walk into a room and his best friend Tyler would be sitting way too close, like knees touching, or Drew would get this blank, zoned out look if I asked about certain weekends where he claimed to be just with the guys. He always had his phone tilted away, never let me meet his family, and flinched when I tried to hold his hand in public. Said he wasn't into PDA, but he wrestled his friends in the park like they were in a weird slow-motion movie. The night everything cracked open started like nothing special. We were at his place, and he said he needed to grab something from the basement. Told me to hang out upstairs. I didn't listen. I wish I had. I got curious, bored, whatever. I went down thinking I'd help him carry whatever it was. The door was half open, and there they were, Drew and Tyler, standing too close. Way too close. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and didn't make a sound. They didn't notice me. They kissed. I just stood there staring at it like my brain had disconnected from my body. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't some drunk dare. It was soft, intentional, like they'd done it 100 times. I backed up and left. I didn't say anything until the next day when he asked why I ghosted him all night. When I told him what I saw, he looked right at me and said I misunderstood it. Said guys get close sometimes, and that I was reading too much into things. That was insecure and projecting. He laughed like I'd accused him of stealing a dog or something ridiculous. He convinced me that what I saw wasn't real, that it was a joke between friends. That I didn't get it because I wasn't close with guys like that. I started questioning everything. Maybe I really didn't understand male friendships. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. I let it go. But after that, things kept slipping out of place. One time, I went to a drawer looking for a charger and found a necklace. It was this cheap-looking chain with a small ring attached to it. It wasn't mine. It wasn't his style either. I asked about it. He said it was his grandfather's. I believed him for like a week until I saw the exact same ring on Tyler's keychain. There were notes in his sketchbook, tiny handwriting packed into the margins, not addressed to me. Stuff about secret names and locked doors and escaping labels. Things he never said out loud. I pretended I didn't read them. By then, I didn't even feel like his girlfriend. I was just a cover. The normal piece in his life he could point to when anyone asked too many questions. But I kept pretending everything was fine, because it was easier than facing how twisted it had become. He started getting me when I brought up anything emotional, would twist my words, accuse me of trying to control him, call me paranoid. He'd say I was a toxic one, that I was obsessed with drama, but I knew something was off. I just didn't know how to prove it. The worst moment came when we went to this cabin trip with his friend group. It was supposed to be a weekend getaway. Nature, s'mores, fake peace. But on the second night, I woke up and Drew wasn't next to me. I walked out into the woods thinking maybe he was just clearing his head or something dumb like that. But then I saw two figures near the tree line, their phones lighting up their faces. It was Drew, and not Tyler this time. It was his other friend, Caleb. They were holding hands. Quiet, close, like this secret bubble the world wasn't allowed in. I didn't go closer. I just watched from behind a tree like a coward. Then I went back to the cabin and laid in bed pretending to sleep until morning. After that trip, I didn't say a word. I just started pulling away. Didn't answer as fast. Canceled plans. Let him think I was fading because I was depressed or bored or whatever excuse he wanted to use. He never asked what was wrong. He didn't really care. As long as I didn't mess up the story he told everyone else, he was fine. The last time I saw him, he acted like nothing had ever happened. Hugged me like we were still close. Made this dumb joke about how he missed me, but that I just didn't understand him. That's the closest he ever got to admitting it. I blocked him 2 hours later. I still see him sometimes online. Always with the same group of guys. Still posting pictures that look perfectly normal if you don't know the cracks underneath. Everyone still thinks he's just a cool, sensitive dude with strong friendships. But I know better. I lived in that silence for almost a year. I think the worst part is I don't even care that he was gay. That was never the issue. It was that he used me like a shield. A tool to keep things hidden. And the whole time, he made me feel crazy for noticing. Made me question my own mind like he had the power to rewrite reality. Anyway, that's the story. Drew wasn't just hiding from the world. He made sure I got buried with him too. I dated a guy once who made me feel like I was the third wheel in my own relationship. His name was Drew, and at first, it felt like he was the answer to all those messy, boring dudes I wasted time on in high school. He was clean, polite, funny without trying, and had this way of paying attention that made you feel like you mattered more than anything. But what I didn't realize at the time is that attention can be a kind of control if it's pointed in just the right way. He had this tight group of guy friends he grew up with. They were always around. I mean always. They came to our dates, showed up when we were hanging out in my room, called him in the middle of dinner, crashed on his couch constantly. I thought it was kind of cute at first, that whole brotherhood thing. I told myself it meant he was loyal, but I didn't know then what that loyalty actually looked like. Things got weird around month 3. There were low moments, like I'd walk into a room and his best friend Tyler would be sitting way too close, like knees touching, or Drew would get this blank, zoned out look if I asked about certain weekends where he claimed to be just with the guys. He always had his phone tilted away, never let me meet his family, and flinched when I tried to hold his hand in public. Said he wasn't into PDA, but he wrestled his friends in the park like they were in a weird slow-motion movie. The night everything cracked open started like nothing special. We were at his place, and he said he needed to grab something from the basement. Told me to hang out upstairs. I didn't listen. I wish I had. I got curious, bored, whatever. I went down, thinking I'd help him carry whatever it was. The door was half open. And there they were, Drew and Tyler, standing too close. Way too close. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and didn't make a sound. They didn't notice me. They kissed. I just stood there staring at it like my brain had disconnected from my body. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't some drunk dare. It was soft, intentional, like they'd done it 100 times. I backed up and left. I didn't say anything until the next day when he asked why I coasted him all night. When I told him what I saw, he looked right at me and said I misunderstood it. Said guys get close sometimes, and that I was reading too much into things. That was insecure and projecting. He laughed like I'd accused him of stealing a dog or something ridiculous. He convinced me that what I saw wasn't real, that it was a joke between friends. That I didn't get it because I wasn't close with guys like that. I started questioning everything. Maybe I really didn't understand male friendships. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. I let it go. But after that, things kept slipping out of place. One time, I opened a drawer looking for a charger and found a necklace. It was this cheap-looking chain with a small ring attached to it. It wasn't mine. It wasn't his style either. I asked about it. He said it was his grandfather's. I believed him for like a week until I saw the exact same ring on Tyler's keychain. There were notes in his sketchbook, tiny handwriting packed into the margins, not addressed to me. Stuff about secret names and locked doors and escaping labels. Things he never said out loud. I pretended I didn't read them. By then, I didn't even feel like his girlfriend. I was just a cover. The normal piece in his life he could point to when anyone asked too many questions. But I kept pretending everything was fine, because it was easier than facing how twisted it had become. He started getting me when I brought up anything emotional, would twist my words, accuse me of trying to control him, call me paranoid. He'd say I was a toxic one, that I was obsessed with drama, but I knew something was off. I just didn't know how to prove it. The worst moment came when we went to this cabin trip with his friend group. It was supposed to be a weekend getaway. Nature, s'mores, fake peace. But on the second night, I woke up and Drew wasn't next to me. I walked out into the woods, thinking maybe he was just clearing his head or something dumb like that. But then I saw two figures near the tree line, their phones lighting up their faces. It was Drew, and not Tyler this time. It was his other friend, Caleb. They were holding hands. Quiet, close, like this secret bubble the world wasn't allowed in. I didn't go closer. I just watched from behind a tree like a coward. Then I went back to the cabin and laid in bed pretending to sleep until morning. After that trip, I didn't say a word. I just started pulling away. Didn't answer as fast. Canceled plans. Let him think I was fading because I was depressed or bored or whatever excuse he wanted to use. He never asked what was wrong. He didn't really care. As long as I didn't mess up the story he told everyone else, he was fine. The last time I saw him, he acted like nothing had ever happened. Hugged me like we were still close. Made this dumb joke about how he missed me, but that I just didn't understand him. That's the closest he ever got to admitting it. I blocked him 2 hours later. I still see him sometimes online. Always with the same group of guys. Still posting pictures that look perfectly normal if you don't know the cracks underneath. Everyone still thinks he's just a cool, sensitive dude with strong friendships. But I know better. I lived in that silence for almost a year. I think the worst part is I don't even care that he was gay. That was never the issue. It was that he used me like a shield. A tool to keep things hidden. And the whole time, he made me feel crazy for noticing. Made me question my own mind like he had the power to rewrite reality. Anyway, that's the story. Drew wasn't just hiding from the world. He made sure I got buried with him too. The moment I realized things had gone off the rails wasn't dramatic. No smashed windows or screaming fights. It was the kind of gut punch you don't see coming until it's already done its damage. I was at a coffee shop with my new girlfriend, just casually hanging out, when she told me she'd been hearing things about me. Not just rumors either. Direct, personal stuff. From Layla. It's wild how someone you once cared about can turn into this shadow that follows you everywhere, twisting everything you do into some kind of mess. With Layla, it didn't even take long after we broke up for her to start this weird, toxic campaign. At first, I thought it was just awkward leftovers of a bad breakup. But then it got ugly in a way that made me question every quiet moment I had left. It all started when I met this girl, Emma, a few months after Layla and I ended things. I wasn't trying to jump into anything, just felt ready to move on. Emma was smart and funny, not some rebound, which was why it hurt even more when she started pulling away. She wouldn't say why, but I could tell something was up. Then one day she finally told me. Layla had been talking to her behind my back, saying I was terrible in ways that cut deeper than I expected. Stuff about how I wasn't worth her time, how I didn't treat her right, how I was bad at being with someone. It felt like a punch to the gut, like I was supposed to just sit there and let some ex rewrite my whole story for a stranger to believe. What made it worse was how detailed Layla was being. She'd throw out these personal things only she knew. Things from our relationship nobody else had ever heard. It wasn't just the lies. It was the way she weaponized every memory, twisting it to make me look like some monster I didn't recognize. I kept trying to ask Emma where she heard this stuff, but she was torn between not wanting to believe it and feeling weird about the whole thing. And the more she pulled away, the more I felt like I was losing the ground beneath me. I wasn't just losing her. It was like losing my own sense of who I was. I didn't even realize Layla was watching at first. She'd show up places, never in a creepy way, just enough to be noticed. A glance here, a coincidental bump into someone she knew I'd be around. Sometimes I'd see her outside my apartment or around the bar where Emma and I hung out. But it wasn't like stalking in a movie where someone's screaming or trying to break in. It was subtle, invasive, like a spider weaving a web you can't see, but you keep walking into. The more she inserted herself, the more the rumors spread. Friends of mine started giving me weird looks. Coworkers whispered behind my back. Emma's friends, too. It wasn't long before I heard from people I barely knew telling me to watch myself or that I needed to be careful with Layla around. I was baffled, wondering how she had managed to convince so many people I was the bad guy. It felt like I was trapped in some kind of nightmare where the past refuses to stay buried. I tried to reach out to Layla directly, hoping for some kind of closure or at least to put a stop to it. But she blocked me before I could even get a word out. I wasn't angry anymore, just desperate to understand what was happening. But there was nothing to understand. It was like she had made it her mission to ruin everything I was building after we ended. One night, after a party with friends, I saw her standing across the street. Not hiding, just watching. The look in her eyes wasn't sadness or regret. It was something colder. Possessive. Like she wanted to remind me that no matter how far I tried to run, she was still controlling the story. The air felt heavy, like the city itself was watching. I walked away, but that night stuck with me for weeks. It was the moment I realized she wasn't going to stop. That this wasn't about us anymore. It was about her control. The worst part was that no one could really do anything. I couldn't prove the rumors were hers. I couldn't stop her from sending messages to Emma or slipping into conversations like a ghost. Even when Emma tried to defend me, it was like the poison had already seeped in. People's minds got made up, and once that happens, it doesn't matter what the truth is. I felt like I was being erased piece by piece, my reputation, my relationships, my own confidence. Every day was a battle just to keep up appearances, to convince myself that what Layla said wasn't real. But it haunted me, this quiet terror that someone who once shared your life could use every detail against you, tearing you down in front of the people you care about. I started to question everything I'd done with her, wondering if maybe I really had been the bad guy she said I was. It's crazy how a few words, planted right, can mess with your mind. But deep down I knew it wasn't true. The problem wasn't me. It was that Layla had become something dark, someone who didn't want to let go, who wanted to own me even when I was gone. In the end, I lost Emma. Not because she didn't care about me, but because the damage was done. The whispers, the doubts, the way Layla's poison spread made it impossible for us to just be. I moved out of the city, changed my number, even tried to start fresh somewhere else. But sometimes I still catch myself glancing over my shoulder, wondering if she's watching, waiting to write the next chapter in this mess she started. It's a weird kind of horror, knowing the person who once said they cared can turn into a ghost that haunts every part of your life. Not with screams or violence, but with quiet cruelty that seeps into everything you are. And honestly, that's the part that sticks with me the most, how someone you love can become the thing you're most afraid of. Getting a letter in the mail could mess with your head so bad. The first one showed up a few weeks after Brian and I broke up. No name, no return address. Just a plain envelope with my name scribbled on it. Inside was a short note, nothing overly threatening, just enough to make me freeze. It mentioned a place only Brian and I had ever been, some private joke I thought was long forgotten. At first, I figured maybe it was some messed up prank, but deep down, I knew exactly who it was from. After that, the letters kept coming. Not every day, but often enough to make me paranoid about checking the mailbox. The messages got darker, more personal. One had a photo inside, a snapshot of me walking home from work, taken from a weird angle that made it obvious someone was watching. It referenced a moment I never told anyone about, a fight Brian and I had in the car that I swore I never talked about with anyone else. That's when the fear started creeping in for real. At first, I thought I was just being crazy, that maybe it was some coincidence or another stalker altogether. But every detail in those letters was so specific, so intimate, that it was impossible to think otherwise. I was caught between disbelief and terror, and no one really got how heavy it felt just to open the mail every day. The packages started showing up too. Little boxes with things inside I thought only Brian had seen or touched. A scarf I left at his place, a book I lent him once, a half-broken phone charger. It was like he was reminding me he was there, even when I was trying so hard to move on. The letters inside those packages weren't just words anymore. They were twisted and cruel, spelling out everything he thought about me now, how he wanted me to suffer. One day, there was a letter that said he knew who I was seeing now, the new person I'd started talking to. It didn't say names, but the details were clear enough to make my heart stop. How could he know? I hadn't told anyone about that. The paranoia took over. I started checking my phone constantly, watching my back everywhere I went. The city that used to feel alive now felt like a trap. Even my friends started noticing the change. I stopped going out as much, stopped answering texts, and when I did, I was always looking over my shoulder. I wanted to tell them, but how do you explain the feeling of being hunted by someone who knows you so well, but now wants to tear you apart from the inside? One of the packages was the worst. Inside was a ripped up photo of me and Brian from when we first started dating. The picture was shredded but taped back together with crude, almost mocking precision. The note inside didn't just threaten. It promised that this was just the beginning, that I'd never be free from what he was doing. It was chilling because it didn't feel like an empty threat. It felt like a plan. I thought about calling the police, but I wasn't sure what they could do without proof. And honestly, I was terrified of what Brian might do if I pushed back. He wasn't just obsessed, he was smart. He knew how to stay just out of reach, how to make me doubt everything and everyone around me. The letters and packages kept coming, each one worse than the last. There was a pattern in the timing, too. It showed up right before something big happened in my life. A job interview, a birthday, even small things like a night out with friends. It was like he was controlling the timeline of my life, squeezing me with his presence. It wasn't just the physical mail either. I started getting anonymous texts and emails with the same twisted content, the same private information that no one else should have had. I changed my passwords, deleted accounts, but nothing stopped the flood. Brian had made himself a ghost in my life, haunting me through every channel possible. I became obsessed with figuring out how he was doing it, trying to find the cracks in my security, hoping to catch him before it went too far. But the more I dug, the more it felt like he was always one step ahead. He knew where I lived, who I talked to, where I worked. There was no escaping him. One night, after a particularly horrible day of getting a package that contained a burned piece of my favorite sweater and a note telling me I'd never be warm again, I sat in my room and realized I couldn't live like this. The constant fear, the creeping dread, the weight of his presence in every corner of my life, it was breaking me down. I packed up the packages, saved all the letters and notes. I didn't want to throw them away, not yet. I needed proof, something real to hold on to in case things spiraled further. And the scary truth was I didn't know if Brian would stop. I didn't know if this was going to end or just get worse. The thing is, even now writing this, months after it all started, I still check my mailbox first thing in the morning. I still jump when I hear a knock or the sound of something dropped near my door. The letters stopped coming for a while, but I know better than to think it's really over. Because when someone knows every secret you have, when they use what you trusted them with as weapons, there's no easy way out. And Brian made sure I'd never forget that. Like, I always figured if a breakup got messy, it would be bad, sure, but not this. Not the kind of nightmare where your own ex starts tearing your life apart with the stuff you trusted them with. It all started with a few messages from friends that made my chest drop. Screenshots of pictures I'd only ever sent to Diana, posted all over social media for everyone to see. Not just anywhere, but places where my family, my coworkers, people I went to school with, they all had access. It was like watching myself get burned alive, but the fire was invisible and no one could put it out. We had dated for a while. Things weren't perfect, but I never thought Diana was the type to hurt me like this. In the beginning, everything was normal. We shared stuff you only share when you think it's safe, you know. Photos, personal messages, things that felt private. That's what makes it worse. When she started posting those photos, the ones meant just for her, it wasn't just embarrassing. It was a total betrayal. But she didn't stop there. The posts started small, like sneaky comments tagging me, hints about what she had and what she could do with it. Then it exploded. Entire albums appeared on public profiles under fake names, filled with pictures and screenshots of messages between us. It was like she wanted the whole world to know my secrets. Even worse, she wrote twisted captions under the pictures mocking me, twisting the truth to make me look like some kind of joke, or worse. I kept hoping it was a phase or maybe some kind of sick joke. But every day, more people I knew would message me about what they'd seen, or worse, whisper behind my back at work. The stares, the awkward silences. It felt like I was shrinking in front of my own eyes. I started avoiding places I used to like. Friends started drifting away because no one wanted to get caught in the drama. Family didn't say much, but I could tell it hurt them, even if they tried not to show it. What's terrifying is how she used the smallest details to humiliate me. Photos where I looked tired, unguarded moments she captured. Messages I sent when I was vulnerable. She'd dig through everything, twisting each piece into a weapon. Once, she even did a photo to make it look like I was doing something horrible. It was fake, but people believed it anyway because she knew exactly how to manipulate the story. I tried blocking her, changing my passwords, reporting the posts. But new accounts kept popping up, spreading the same stuff in different ways. It felt like no matter what I did, she was always one step ahead, lurking, ready to strike again. The worst part, she didn't even seem to care about the damage. It was like my life was her playground, and breaking me was a game. Work became unbearable. I wasn't just the guy with a bad breakup anymore. I was the guy everyone whispered about, the one people avoided. I lost a few opportunities because my reputation was shot. Even simple things like answering emails or going to meetings felt like walking through a minefield. I wasn't safe anywhere. At home, it didn't get better either. I'd get messages from strangers who saw the posts, some nasty, some just confused. It was like my private life had exploded into public, and I had no control over any of it. I kept deleting my social media accounts, but it never felt like enough. The damage was done. My phone felt like a ticking bomb, and every notification made my stomach drop. Some nights, I just sat in the dark, scrolling through everything she posted, trying to figure out how someone you once cared about could turn so vicious. It wasn't just about getting revenge, it felt personal, like she wanted to erase me from every part of my life. I thought about confronting her, but that felt too dangerous. What if she had more tricks up her sleeve? What if it got worse? Even though she wasn't physically there anymore, it felt like she was inside my head, haunting every move I made. I was paranoid about every message, every new friend request, every glance from someone I didn't recognize. It was like I was living under a cloud that wouldn't lift. Eventually, I realized this wasn't going to end on its own. But fighting back meant facing the chaos she created. It meant digging up all the dirt she threw at me and proving what was real and what was twisted lies. It was exhausting and felt hopeless some days. I guess the worst part is how easily someone can destroy you when they have access to your most private moments. You think trust is sacred until it's used as ammunition. Diana didn't just break up with me. She broke everything I'd built. My reputation, my friendships, my peace of mind. All of the stuff I thought I'd shared in confidence. Now, every time I check my phone or log onto a site, there's that knot in my stomach. I'm always waiting for the next thing to drop, the next secret she'll expose. And even if the post stopped tomorrow, the damage sticks around. It's like a scar that doesn't heal, a reminder that someone you once loved can become the worst kind of nightmare without ever lifting a finger. I don't know exactly when it all started, but one day I opened my front door and found a package sitting in the welcome mat. No return address, no note on the outside. I was already a little on edge since Paul and I had split a few months before, but this felt different. Inside was a small object that belonged to me. My favorite bracelet, the one I always wore, missing since we broke up. I couldn't believe it. How did he even get it? I had no idea it was missing until then. And that's when the nightmare officially kicked in. At first, I thought maybe it was just a creepy prank. Like maybe Paul wanted to mess with me but wasn't actually dangerous. But that was just the start. From then on, every few days, another gift would show up at my place. Sometimes it was something small but personal. A book I'd left at his apartment, a pair of sunglasses I thought I'd lost, even a random hair tie. Other times, it was a photo. Not just any photo, but ones that made it clear he'd been watching me. One picture showed me leaving work, another had me at the grocery store, my face caught off guard. The camera angle was always just off enough to freak me out, like he was close but trying not to be seen. The weirdest part was how these gifts always arrived when I was alone or just getting back from somewhere. It felt like he knew exactly when I'd be home or out. I started locking every door and window, even putting extra locks on the front door, but somehow he kept slipping past it all. One morning, I found a note on my doorstep written on a crumpled piece of paper, no name or signature. The handwriting was familiar, unmistakably his, but the words were what got to me. I'm always close. You can't hide. I felt my stomach drop just reading that, and the panic hit like a punch in the gut. This wasn't about missing me or wanting to get back together. It was about control, about making me feel like I was never safe, not even in my own home. I stopped answering my phone because every call was from unknown numbers. I changed my social media privacy settings, but it didn't matter. I began to notice things missing. A book gone from my shelf. A mug that always sat on my desk nowhere to be found. It wasn't until I spotted my scarf draped over a chair on my porch one chilly evening that I realized he had been coming inside. He'd been in my apartment, without me knowing, without leaving any signs. That realization crushed me more than anything. The idea that someone you once cared about, someone you trusted, was sneaking into your life in the most twisted way imaginable. I wanted to call the cops, but I didn't want to look paranoid. I didn't want to admit that Paul had completely invaded my privacy. Days later, the gifts didn't stop. One package was a half-burned candle I'd left at his place months ago. Another was a jar filled with dirt and leaves from my backyard. It was like he was collecting pieces of my life, holding on them like trophies and forcing me to relive every moment I spent with him. The worst was the last package. It wasn't a thing this time. It was a photo album, and inside were pictures of me sleeping. I had no idea how he managed to take them. The photos were from different nights, different positions, like he was watching through a window or maybe even inside the apartment. I couldn't sleep after that. Every noise in my apartment felt like him lurking in the shadows. I didn't tell many people about it. Friends thought I was overreacting, like maybe it was just some stalker who wasn't really him. But the things he sent back, personal, private, things only he could have gotten, made it impossible to doubt. I tried everything, from changing my locks again to installing cameras, but the fear never left. It was like living under a cloud of constant dread. Eventually, I moved out of that apartment. I thought changing my address and leaving behind all the memories would break his hold on me. But even months later, I sometimes find little things in my new place. A note slipped under the door, a flower on the porch, and I know it's him. Paul never stopped watching. He never stopped controlling, just in a quieter, darker way. That whole time, I thought the worst was over when we ended things, but his gifts showed me the truth. He didn't just want to be with me. He wanted to own me, to erase every bit of my space and privacy. And even now, writing this, I'm wondering if he's still out there, still waiting to send the next gift that reminds me he's closer than I want to believe. I never thought I'd tell anyone this story, mostly because it sounds like something straight out of a weird horror movie or some bad internet myth. But it's real. It happened to me. The weirdest, creepiest thing I ever saw was at Ashley's place, my ex Ashley. Honestly, I'm still not sure if I was just too stunned to react or if my brain was trying to protect me by denying what I saw. It was one of those moments where you want to believe your eyes are messing with you, but they're not. Ashley was always a bit different. Eccentric, sure, but also kind of charming in a way that made you overlook the weird bits. I mean, everyone has their quirks, right? But Ashley's quirks were on a whole other level. She was the kind of person who obsessed over tiny details most people wouldn't notice, like organizing books by the color of their spines or meticulously labeling every drawer in her apartment. She had this quiet intensity about her, and when we were together, it felt like you were part of some secret world she carried around with her. After we broke up, it wasn't messy or dramatic. It just ended. We weren't on bad terms exactly, but there was definitely distance. So when I found myself needing to pick up some things she'd left at my place, and since I happened to be near her apartment, I figured I'd stop by, grab the stuff, and get it over with. I thought it'd be quick and painless. Her place was this cramped little unit on the second floor of an aging building, the kind with creaky wooden floors that groaned underfoot, and the faint smell of old carpet mixed with the lingering aroma of cooking spices, something vaguely curry-like, but dusty and stale. The hallway smelled faintly of mothballs and something else I couldn't place. When I rang the bell, the door opened before I could even knock. Ashley was there, of course, dressed in a baggy sweatshirt, hair tied back messily, and that same distant, unreadable look she always had when she was deep in her own world. The apartment was dimly lit by a single lamp in the corner that cast long shadows on the peeling wallpaper. It wasn't cozy, more like cramped and a little suffocating. She had two cats, orange tabbies, both with these calm, almost knowing eyes that made me uncomfortable without really knowing why. I liked cats, so I wasn't bothered by them, but those two always seemed a little too still, like they were watching you rather than just hanging out. I hadn't even gotten the chance to say hi properly when Ashley did something that stopped me dead in my tracks. She sat down on the floor, right there in the middle of the living room, and then she started licking them. Not a quick lick like a cat grooming itself or a dog licking its paw. I mean full-on deliberate licking like she was grooming them. The sound was soft but wet, weirdly rhythmic, like some bizarre ritual. She ran her tongue gently over the fur, over the cat's ears, their heads. The cats didn't flinch or pull away. It just sat there, calm, eyes half closed, almost like they were accepting it. I stood frozen, mouth dry, heart pounding in this weird mix of confusion and creeping dread. Part of me wanted to laugh it off, to say, okay, this is just some eccentric quirk or weird way to bond with her pets. But deep down I knew this was something else. Ashley's eyes were fixed on the cats, calm but intense, like she was in some trance. The way she moved her head, the soft sound she made, it wasn't playful or affectionate in any normal sense. It felt like she was trying to become part of them. Like she wasn't just licking her cats, but merging with them, imitating them, taking on their nature. I wanted to say something, to ask her what the hell she was doing, but my throat tightened and the words wouldn't come. I just stood there, frozen, watching as she continued this slow, deliberate act, like it was some kind of secret ritual only she understood. After a few minutes, she stopped licking and started whispering to them. Her voice dropped to this soft murmur, almost like she was sharing secrets or casting spells. She made little hand gestures, subtle but deliberate, almost like some kind of sign language or communication only the cats could understand. The whole scene was surreal, like I'd slipped into a nightmare where nothing was quite right, but nothing was outright threatening either. I felt like an intruder witnessing something that wasn't meant for human eyes. I edged back slowly, my mind racing to make sense of it. Was she mentally unwell? Had she always been hiding this side of herself? Or was this some kind of coping mechanism for being alone? The cats, calm and still as ever, were somehow the strangest part, completely unfazed by her behavior, like this was routine for them. I don't remember exactly what I said after that. Something about grabbing my stuff, probably mumbled, and rushed. I wanted to leave fast. The air felt thick, heavy, like the apartment itself was pressing in on me. I kept glancing back at Ashley, but she was lost in her own world, eyes distant, lips still moving quietly to the cats. I left as soon as I could, heart pounding, my mind spinning. I told myself to just brush it off, that it was just some weird eccentricity, maybe stress or loneliness gone off the rails. But the image stuck with me, the way she licked those cats like they were her closest companions, the soft whispering, the strange hand gestures. Weeks later, whenever I thought about Ashley, that moment played on repeat in my head. I started piecing together little oddities I'd ignored before. The way she avoided eye contact sometimes, the cold edge beneath her charm, the strange silences during conversations that felt less like pauses and more like barriers. She'd show up unannounced sometimes, like she was trying to keep tabs on me, but always acted like everything was normal, as if that night never happened, as if she was perfectly sane and I was the one losing it. It wasn't just a one-time weird thing. It was the buildup of all those small, uncomfortable moments piling up into something I couldn't ignore. Eventually, I cut off contact for good. I told myself it was safer to walk away from whatever that was before I got sucked into some darker, twisted spiral. The cats, the licking, the whispering, it wasn't normal, and it wasn't just harmless oddness. It felt like a sign, a glimpse into something deeply unsettling beneath the surface of someone I thought I knew. Sometimes I wonder if she ever realized how strange she was being that night, or if she was completely lost inside her own mind. Maybe to her it was all perfectly normal. For me, though, that night at Ashley's place shattered something inside me. Not with fear in the usual way, but with this creeping sense that sometimes the people you care about have parts of themselves you'll never understand, or want to. I don't think I'll ever forget that image. Not because it scared me in a typical way, but because it showed me how deep the weirdness can go, lurking quietly in the corners of someone you used to call yours. There's a kind of pain that doesn't come from just being broken up with, but from losing someone you thought you knew, except they're not really gone. It's like your world shifts on its axis, but the object that caused the shift is still there, just hidden in the shadows. That's exactly what happened with Shane. He didn't just walk away or fade out of my life the way you might expect. No, he took it way further, far beyond anything I could have imagined. He pretended he was dead. The whole thing still feels surreal when I think about it, like a twisted nightmare you hope to wake from. But this wasn't some story or a scene from a movie. This was my life, raw and real, and it still haunts me. It all started with a message. I remember exactly where I was when it happened, sitting alone in my apartment scrolling through social media to distract myself from the loneliness. Then, out of nowhere, I got a notification from a Facebook account I'd never seen before. Someone claimed to be a family member of Shane's, but the profile was new with only a handful of friends and no posts. Already felt off. The message itself was so gentle, so full of sorrow, telling me Shane had died in a car accident just a few days earlier. Attached were pictures I recognized, photos of Shane from better times, smiling with that half grin he always had. The message went on with long paragraphs, full of memories and pain, and as I scrolled, there were dozens of comments from friends and relatives expressing grief and condolences. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It hit me like a physical blow, disbelief mixing with a sharp, stabbing sadness. I kept scrolling, hoping it was a mistake or some horrible prank. But the posts kept coming, more memorial pages, more messages, more fake grief. It felt staged, too perfect, too coordinated. But somehow it was also painfully real enough to tear me apart. I sat there on my bed for what felt like hours, gripping my phone like it was a lifeline, tears streaming down my face because I thought I'd lost him forever. Even after we broke up, I held on to some fragile hope deep down. Maybe he still cared, maybe we could find our way back. But all those dreams shattered instantly, replaced by this heavy, suffocating sadness that pressed down on my chest so hard I could barely breathe. Everyone around me was reaching out, sending messages of sympathy, people I barely even knew. I felt trapped, like I was playing the role of a grieving girlfriend who had lost the love of her life, even though he wasn't mine anymore. It was a strange, painful limbo, mourning someone who was supposed to be gone forever. Months went by, and I tried my best to bury the whole thing, to move on and rebuild what was left of my life. But then, slowly at first, things started to get weird. The kind of weird that you tell yourself is just your mind playing tricks on you. It began with small things. This creeping feeling that someone was watching me, shadows flickering at the edges of my vision. The sudden prickling sensation like 1,000 eyes on my back whenever I was alone. I told myself it was paranoia, a leftover effect of grief and stress. But the feeling grew stronger, more persistent, until it wasn't something I could ignore anymore. It was like the air in my apartment thickened with something unseen but horribly present. One night, I was lying in bed trying to fall asleep when I glanced out my bedroom window and saw a figure standing on the sidewalk across the street. At first, I thought maybe it was a neighbor or someone just passing by, but something was wrong. The figure didn't move at all, just stood there, unmoving and silent, staring straight up at my window. My heart nearly stopped. A cold shiver ran down my spine, but this was different from normal fear. It felt like the kind of dread that sinks into your bones, mixing with disbelief, like you're witnessing something impossible but undeniable. I blinked, hoping it would vanish. It didn't. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces started to fit. The strange family accounts, the coordinated social media memorials, the staged grief. It wasn't about closure or mourning. It was about control. Shane wasn't dead. He had faked his own death to mess with me, to make me question everything I thought was real, to trap me in this endless limbo where I wasn't sure if I was losing my mind or if there was something darker at play. The idea was terrifying, but part of me knew it was true. That's when the paranoia became all-consuming. I began to notice more signs, messages coming from accounts that looked real but felt off, a brief glimpse of a reflection in my hallway mirror when I was sure I was alone, my phone acting strange with calls dropping or texts not sending, apps glitching like someone was deliberately messing with my connection. I told close friends about what was happening, but they'd brushed it off or looked at me like I was losing it. Who fakes their own death and stalks their ex like some kind of horror story? They asked. I wanted to explain, to make them understand, but the truth sounded insane even to me. Desperate for answers and proof, I set up security cameras around my apartment, the door, the windows, the hallway. One night, I finally caught something on tape. The footage was grainy, but there was no mistaking him, or someone who looked exactly like him, lurking just outside my door, hidden in the shadows. He didn't knock or call, he just waited there silently, watching. It was like he was a ghost haunting my life, appearing but never fully revealing himself. The sight chilled me in a way nothing ever had before. What made it worse was that Shane never reached out directly. No confrontations, no apologies, no explanations. Just this cruel game of pretending to be dead while stalking me in the background like some living nightmare. It wasn't about moving on or closure for him. It was about obsession out of control, about twisting my world until I wasn't sure where reality ended and paranoia began. I kept thinking about how far someone could go to break you down mentally, to own you even after they're gone. The fake death, the staged grief, the silent stalking. It was like a horror story written just for me. I felt trapped inside a nightmare I couldn't escape. Eventually, I had to leave. I changed my phone number, moved to a new apartment across town, deleted every social media account I had, and tried to rebuild my life without the constant shadow of fear hanging over me. But even now, months later, the paranoia lingers. Every quiet moment is heavy with the possibility that Shane might still be watching, waiting, still playing his twisted game from the shadows. The day I met Polly's family is still one of the strangest, most messed up experiences I've ever had. You don't expect to walk into someone's house and have it turn into a low-key war zone where everyone seems to hate the person you're there for. I thought meeting the family would be just another step in getting to know her better, maybe awkward but normal enough. Instead, it felt like walking into a trap I didn't even know existed. Polly and I had been dating for a few months, and things weren't perfect, but I thought they were okay. And she told me I should meet her family. I was kind of nervous, sure, but also curious. What kind of people was she really close to? The way she talked about them made them sound normal enough, if a little wild, but nothing that screamed trouble. So I agreed. When I got to their place, it was one of those old houses on a quiet street, the kind with peeling paint and overgrown weeds. Nothing fancy. Polly opened the door, but instead of a warm welcome, the second I stepped inside, I got this weird vibe, like I wasn't really welcome. It wasn't just a cold atmosphere, it was something deeper. The way the family stared at me, not like curious strangers, but like I was some kind of enemy invading their space. Polly tried to keep it chill, but the tension in the room was heavy. Her dad was the first one to say something, and it wasn't anything polite. It was loud, angry, and loaded with a kind of resentment that made my skin crawl. Then her mom joined in, not holding back either. The family started piling on, saying things about Polly I hadn't heard before, stuff so harsh and personal that it hit me like a gut punch. I'm not the kind of person who takes sides in family drama, but this was something else. I found out pretty fast that Polly's family had been through some intense fights with her, and it wasn't just regular bickering. They talked about how she had burned bridges with them, how she was selfish, how she caused nothing but chaos. The things they said were so blunt and raw it felt like being stuck in a storm you didn't sign up for. It was like they were unloading years of frustration and anger on her right there in front of me. Polly didn't say much during all this. She looked pissed and hurt, but also kind of used to it, like this was just the way her family communicated. The more they went on, the more I started to see a side of her that didn't match the girl I thought I knew. The stories they told made her look reckless and cruel, someone who tore people apart without caring. I wasn't sure how much was true and how much was just family bitterness, but hearing all of it in that setting felt like the whole world was crashing down around me. What messed with me even more was how they included me in their fury. They weren't just ripping into Polly, they were warning me, saying I'd regret being involved with her, that she was trouble I didn't need. I was sitting there, caught in the middle, trying to figure out if I was supposed to be defending her or running for the door. It was confusing and surreal, like being in the front row of a show that I hadn't bought a ticket for. I tried to keep my cool, but inside I was a mess. I had come to like Polly, or at least the version of her she showed me. Seeing this side, the one her family saw, made me wonder if I'd been living a lie. The more they talked, the more I felt like I was drowning in this weird mix of family hatred and toxic history that wasn't mine, but somehow I was getting dragged into. After what felt like hours of being blasted with everything I didn't expect, I finally got a break. Polly pulled me aside and told me the family had always hated her, that they didn't want her to be happy or with anyone. She said they were jealous, that it was all lies and exaggerations, but I didn't know what to believe anymore. The place was filled with so much tension and raw anger that it was hard to tell where the truth ended and pain began. Leaving that house felt like escaping a bad dream. The street outside never looked so bright. I wanted to get away to put some distance between me and all that noise. But even as I walked off, the words, the insults, the warnings echoed in my head. It was like their voices had carved out part of my brain, reminding me that some people's families don't just argue, they dismantle. In the days after, I couldn't stop thinking about it. about Polly, about her family, about how tangled everything was. I started noticing little things in Polly that made sense now. The way she got defensive, the way she sometimes pushed me away without reason, like she was waiting for me to fail or leave. It felt like her family's hatred had seeped into her, turning her into someone fighting battles I could barely understand. I kept going with her for a while, but the weight of that family drama pulled us down. Every time I tried to get close, I felt like I was stepping into a minefield. And I realized something. If the people who are supposed to love you the most are willing to tear you apart in front of someone new, maybe the real problem isn't just the family. I don't know if Polly and I were ever really meant to last, but meeting her family, getting caught in their venom, showed me just how messy and dark some relationships can get when the people around you want to drag you under. It was like stepping into someone else's storm and getting hit with every thunderclap they'd been holding in for years. I still think about that day sometimes, not because I want to go back, but because it changed how I see things. Sometimes the people closest to you carry the loudest anger, and it's not about you at all. It's about years of broken trust, fights that never got fixed, and a kind of hate that feels impossible to escape. Meeting Polly's family wasn't just meeting them. It was meeting the chaos that followed her like a shadow and realizing some doors, once opened, don't close so easily. I'd never thought a prank could mess up my life so badly. Dex was that kind of guy who thought every little thing was an opportunity to pull some joke, no matter how dumb or cruel. At first, it was kind of funny, like when he swapped my shampoo with honey or covered my car in sticky notes. Just annoying stuff. But there was always this edge to it, like he wasn't just trying to make me laugh. He wanted to get under my skin. He always said it was all in good fun, but looking back, I can see he was testing boundaries, seeing how far he could push me without breaking me. The thing with Dex was that he never did the same prank twice. He was always planning the next one, something louder or meaner than before. He'd wait until I was stressed or tired, then hit me with some fresh nonsense. It got exhausting, but I didn't want to be the boring ex who couldn't take a joke. So I played along, mostly trying to keep my cool while he pushed and pushed. We lived in this tiny apartment near a busy street, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone's business. Dex loved the idea of making a scene, and I hated it. He'd do stuff like hide my phone or pour salt in my cereal. But then there were the moments where it felt like he was just looking for the worst possible way to embarrass me. He wanted control through humiliation, and somehow it always wrapped up in a prank. One night, after a fight that left both of us bitter and yelling, I thought maybe it was finally over. We were done, right? But the next day, I walked into the apartment and found the whole place trashed, like some disaster movie had hit my life. Dex hadn't just pranked me. He'd torn through everything I cared about. My books were soaked in water, my clothes ripped up, my favorite pictures scratched beyond repair. I realized then that this wasn't about jokes anymore. It was about hurting me. But it wasn't until a few weeks later that things went too far. I was staying over at a friend's place because I couldn't face my apartment after what happened. Dex had been texting me, mostly snarky comments. Nothing too serious, or so I thought. Then he sent me a message saying he had a surprise for me and that I'd better check my door when I got back. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I didn't want to go home feeling like I was running away, so I went back. The hallway smelled weird the moment I got there, like something rotten mixed with gasoline. My heart sank. My door was covered in yellow tape, the kind you see around crime scenes. I didn't touch it. I looked through the peephole and saw a small package taped to the doorframe. I didn't want to open it, but I had to know what Dex had done. Inside the package was a jar filled with something disgusting, a mix of mud, old food scraps, and some kind of red liquid. On top of it was a note with my name written in messy handwriting that said, "Thought you'd like a taste of what you're really worth." The whole thing felt like a threat, a warning. I knew then that Dex wasn't playing around anymore. This wasn't about pranks or jokes. This was about scaring me. I tried to stay calm, but every day after that, the gifts got worse. Sometimes it was just gross stuff left on my doorstep. Other times, it was personal items I'd lost or thought were gone forever, like my favorite necklace or a sweater I'd lent to my mom years ago. Somehow, Dex had found all of it, and every time he left these things, he'd include a note that made it clear he was watching, waiting. My friends told me to get the cops involved, but I wasn't ready. I felt trapped in this weird cycle of fear and disbelief. Dex was right there, lurking in the background of my life, twisting everything I thought I knew about safety and privacy. Every sound outside my apartment made me jump. Every shadow felt like him watching me. The worst part was that nobody could see it. To everyone else, it just looked like weird harassment, or maybe I was overreacting. But I knew the truth. Dex had crossed some line I didn't even realize existed, and now I was stuck trying to pick up the pieces of a life that felt like it was unraveling fast. One night, I stayed up late staring at the door, waiting for the next prank. When I heard footsteps, I froze. The door handle rattled, then stopped. Someone was there, just standing outside, probably enjoying my fear. I didn't open the door. I just sat there, waiting for it to be over. When the footsteps finally left, I opened the door and found a single Polaroid taped to the floor. It was a picture of me, taken through my bedroom window while I was asleep. I dropped it and everything inside me snapped. That was the moment I knew I had to get away. Not just from Dex, but from the whole nightmare he created. I packed a bag and left my apartment the next morning, no looking back. Looking back now, it wasn't just about pranks or jokes anymore. Dex used those games as a mask for something darker, a way to control me, to scare me into submission. What started as funny turned into a horror show that wrecked my sense of safety and trust. I don't know where Dex is now or what he's planning next, but one thing's for sure, some pranks aren't just jokes. They're the beginning of something dangerous, and once it crosses that line, there's no going back. Carrie wasn't just an ex you forget about, she was this constant shadow that popped up when I least expected it, no matter how many walls I tried to put between us. It didn't matter if I changed my number or blocked her on every app I could find. Carrie had this insane way of showing up in the places I went to escape everything, like she was daring me to notice. The first time I saw her again, it was at my gym. I'd been there a few times since the breakup, trying to keep my head straight, get some distance. I was mid-set, focused on not passing out when I caught her in the corner of my eye, just standing there like she owned the place. Not making a scene, just watching. It wasn't the usual jealousy or anger I'd expect. More like she was marking territory, letting me know she could be anywhere she wanted. That's when the panic kicked in. How the hell did she know I was there? I hadn't told anyone. I hadn't posted anything on social media. I felt like my life wasn't mine anymore, like I was living in some messed up version of a movie where the villain always wins. I left early that day, heart racing, and started thinking maybe this wasn't going to be over anytime soon. Changing my phone number seemed like the obvious move. I was done with the constant texts, the calls I didn't answer, but that still made me feel like she was right there, breathing down my neck. I thought that would fix it, but it didn't. A couple of weeks after the new number, I was at this tiny coffee shop I've been going to since college. It was the kind of place with old couches and weird art on the walls. A little corner of calm. I was waiting for my order, scrolling through my phone when I felt it again. That weird, sinking feeling that someone was watching me. I turned around slowly, not really expecting to see her, but there she was. Carrie was sitting at a table just a few feet away, pretending to read a magazine but with eyes locked on me. I'm pretty sure she caught me staring, and I swear she smirked like it was all a joke to her. Like showing up uninvited was some twisted game to her, and she was winning. I wanted to walk out, but it was too late. The damage was done. I felt exposed, like the whole cafe was in on whatever nightmare I was stuck in. It wasn't just a gym or a coffee shop. She started showing up at work too. My job is at this rundown office building in the city. Nothing fancy, nothing high profile, but it's mine. One day, I was in the break room grabbing a coffee when I saw her through the window, leaning against the wall outside, acting like she just happened to be there. I can't explain how I knew it was her without any words or signs. Maybe it was the way she looked at me like she was daring me to panic. Maybe it was the cold feeling in my gut. Whatever it was, I felt frozen. I didn't want to be that guy who called the cops or made a scene, but I was terrified she'd do something stupid. Every time I thought I'd finally outrun her, she'd pop up again. One afternoon, I was at a park just trying to clear my head, and there she was, sitting on a bench across the path, just watching. No phone, no distractions. Just Carrie staring at me like she was reading every thought I had. I started avoiding all the places I loved, but the harder I ran, the more desperate she seemed to get. It was like she was rewriting the rules of what it meant to be an ex, turning every place I went into her personal hunting ground. Eventually, I changed my number again. I moved to a new apartment in a different neighborhood, switched my gym, started going to a different coffee shop, all in this exhausting attempt to erase her from my life. But the strangest thing, she didn't just show up. She left little signs that she'd been there. Random objects moved. Coffee cups with lipstick marks on them, my stuff rearranged just enough to let me know she was watching. It felt like my whole life had become this low-budget horror movie where the villain wasn't even trying to hide anymore. I was always on edge, checking every corner, wondering when she'd walk through my door or pop up in the next unexpected place. Sometimes I wonder if she's just waiting like a ghost I can't get rid of, enjoying the fear she's caused. Other times, I think maybe she's trying to prove something to herself or to me or whoever, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that no matter how much I tried to disappear, she was always close, always watching. And now I'm not sure what to do next. The idea of moving again feels pointless, and blocking numbers only slows her down for a little while. Carrie made sure I knew one thing loud and clear: there's no running from someone who refuses to disappear.